We're not teaching kids to take a test. We now need to teach kids how to be a part of society. And so along the way, that's some of what we did. We tried to say, how do we make kids better for this next generation or society?
All right, check it out. I'm here with Dena Cushenberry, who is the former superintendent of Warren Township in Indiana, and now the author of a new book called Vertigo, the deliberate destabilization of public education. And it's a really interesting book. I think that you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Such a thoughtful leader, one that really cares about developing others and is just so considerate. And I think that one of the things that she talks about is just the need for coherence, and we'll go into that in the interview. So see you on the other side. All right, Dena and Leonard, I am super excited to have you on with me today because you're not only one of my favorite couples in education, but I've learned so much from both of you. And I've been following this journey of this new book that you're coming out with. Tell us why you wanted to write this book, what kind of the core concept is, and then we'll kind of go from there and see what comes up out of that.
So, Anthony, good to see and work with you too. It's been a while, but this book, I think, is just years of work that we've done, and we were excited to share. It definitely tells a story of our district and other districts around the country who have really looked at how we push innovation, personalization, and what that looks like.
My point about encouraging Dena to write this book was that having worked with many, many school systems, I think less than 1% of them have a clear purpose and a set of core values that guide their action. And in her district, she managed to take an innovation, personalized learning, and message it within the construct of their core purpose and their core values. And that is instructive for people to learn from.
Yeah, so I'm sure there are a lot of superintendents around the country and leaders around the country that feel like their story is so unique. How have you kind of figured out that this is really a kind of unique story? What went behind that thinking to say that it's worth putting the effort into writing a book about it?
Well, basically thinking right now about what's happening with the pandemic, we're just saying, wow, the work that we did really would support what's happening right now. We looked at, the infrastructure as far as needing technology and what that looks like and how we provide access to students and families around our district. And now, that's needed around the country.
As you guys both think about kind of the leadership skills pre-COVID to kind of the skills that you see are necessary now, what are the skills that are going to be post-COVID, and what are the things that should come from pre-COVID, and what are the things that should be kind of coming from now as you reshape and reimagine what leadership looks like?
I think superintendents have been overwhelmed with having to deal with a public that is scared and frightened. And the first principles of schooling is you got to provide a safe environment, not only for kids, but also for your staff. So I think listening in a sensitive way to teachers and to parents about what it is to work in these environments is crucial. And I think that is demanding more and more of these superintendents. And also how to explain, what are we going to do with kids who aren't learning? How are we going to make that up? And to be having those conversations within their communities. So I think the community engagement piece is the key.
And always saying, how are we creating conditions for all students to learn? How are we creating the conditions for teachers to learn? And what does that new learning look like? And what environments do we need to have just to make sure that this learning is taking place?
And how to prioritize what populations you're really going to serve. One of my students is a central office administrator in Columbus, Indiana. He fought with the superintendent politely to take care of kids with disabilities first, because they were the population who are absolutely not going to get any service. They're not going to learn remotely. That's another skill issue. Who are you going to prioritize? Who needs a service more than maybe, and you can explain it to your public in a meaningful way.
And the other thing is resources. How are you using your resources? How do you find someone to help you with technology? And so some of the book gives you some of the ways that we were able to do that, and who we needed to call upon, who we needed to talk to. And then we also valued our teachers and said, help us out.
So I want to kind of shift our thinking to a little bit more macro level. I think you made some very intentional moves in the district from, my experience with you guys. And when we were preparing for this, you were like, there's been a purposeful destabilization in education from, in Indiana, I know there were constant shifts around standards, right? Just flip flop back and forth. And so there was that kind of destabilization. There's destabilization of funding, and as each administration shifts, the way federal funding gets allocated, and so it's really hard to plan and manage and anticipate growth in an organization that way. But as you think about the destabilization that occurs in the system, what are some of the moves that you feel that are critical for a district leader to think about so that they are able to kind of hold it together?
So we had what I would call a very strict mission. And we talked about innovate, educate, inspire. Everything we did, we innovated, we educated, and we inspired. We also talked about what does each student need to be able to do in order to be successful in life beyond school. We, did all the things that we could to just make sure that we were preparing kids for their future and not our future.
And I think one of the innovations in Dena's district, her key people were instructional specialists. And they knew if they had to be talking about personalized learning for kids, the teachers that is, the instructional specialists had to start to think differently about how they provided their support. And that was a key flip that they made in the district.
Well, and back to that, when you were talking about, we talked coherence, we always talked about college and career readiness. We always talked about the social and emotional and well-being of the students in the district. And, we always talked about personalization. And that's what we really stuck our hats on. And for most of the book, you will see how did we do that college and career readiness in changing assessments and standards. What did that really mean? We're not teaching kids to take a test. We now need to teach kids how to be a part of society. And so along the way, that's some of what we did. We tried to say, how do we make kids better for this next generation or society versus taking a test?
Yeah. Well, I mean, after having, visited and met a lot of your teammates and such, I think that there is a secret sauce you had, which is a really strong team, right? One that it was working together. And I think that that's actually really hard to build, right? Where you have a direct team that is moving in the same direction. They kind of have the same vision and understanding, and they know what their position is in the work to make sure that you achieve the goals. Being that that's the secret sauce, what's the secret ingredient? How do you make that happen?
Well, the one thing we always said, why are we doing what we're doing? We always had a why. Why are we moving to personalization? Who's going to benefit? Who's going to help us get there? And so we were always asking why. And so we put together a theory of action, and we used the Wallace Foundation. So we said, if we want students to be able to do such, then we had to make sure that teachers understood. Then we had to make sure that building level administrators knew, and then central office. And so we did this backward design saying, these are the things that need to be in place if we want our students to be productive citizens, or if they want to be whatever they want to be.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap this up, I think there's one thing I wanted to get at, and maybe it's in your book, I don't know, but when I first met you, I just, it was a very easy conversation. I could call you by your first name, like you didn't have the barriers up. It was a very kind of welcoming conversation, even though it was the first time. I saw that with your folks too, where, it was just a very personable interaction. And so as a result, like as an outsider that was coming in, I not only felt welcome, but I wanted to be part of the work. How do you create that?
I think for me, just being authentic, being who you are all the time. So no one has to say, I wonder which person is showing up today, because I've worked for people like that. And so I always wanted to be the person that other people wanted to work with or for. I always wanted people to challenge me. And I think it's important that as a leader, you're open to listening, because I learned so much from listening. I mean, I listen to people's words. I listen to the way they look, because their body language tells me things. And so I'm always thinking how I am going to ensure that everybody in the organization has a voice, is heard, and valued. And those are the things that, I try to do, even with our kids. I want parents to feel that way. I want students to feel that way when they see me. So everybody knows who they are receiving every day. And so always knowing that we can have really tough and good dialogue, but are we missing anything when we walk out of this room today? What are the things we're facing, and are we ready for them? Yeah. And if not, let's come back and talk about it a little more.
Well, I'm really excited about your book. Can you just tell the audience the title and when it's going to be available and where they could find it?
Absolutely. It's Vertigo, the Destabilization of Public Education. And, it's from a superintendent's perspective, but I think along the way, everybody will be able to find themselves in this book.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dena. I certainly did. She is one of my favorite people to talk to. She's just always there for me and has always been a thoughtful leader, and one where I can have really honest conversations, and you could probably see that from that conversation as well. So I hope you get this book called Vertigo by Dena Cushenberry. I think it'll be a great book, and it'll come out in the spring. So check it out. Peace.